Assalamu alaikum. This is session 14 of LinkedIn one-on-one, and today the plus one is Mr. Ehsan Saya, running Daraz in Pakistan. Ehsan, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. I'm doing great, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Walaikum salam.
Very good. Very good, bro. It's good to see you. And let's kick this off because I'm really excited to talk about something that you have recently shared all over social as well. The 2019 e-commerce index that Daraz has prepared. So, I mean, it's a pretty wow document. You guys have been very transparent, I think, in some of the data that you've shared and the way you've put this together. So do you want to just talk us through the thought process behind that first?
Yeah, sure. Give me 1 second. Let me also open it on my end so I can refer to parts of it.
Oh, I've been reading it avidly for over the last couple of days.
Have you? Okay, good. Then we can have some interesting discussion. So our thought process was that there hasn't really been like e-commerce is a very informal industry in many ways, right? अगर आपको मालूम करना है कि textile में क्या हो रहा है, it's very easy for you to sort of go and do your research, figure out what's happening in textile sector in Pakistan, what the growth has been, who the biggest players are, how much it contributes to GDP. With e-commerce, you have like zero idea about what's happening, who the players are, what like how things are changing. And what we also felt was that there are some brands and some companies that really understand it, and some that are just like यार मतलब 99% ऑफलाइन से आता है 1% के लिए मैं क्या कोशिश करूं. And so it was really to also show them that there's a huge potential of this in Pakistan. It was also to show other businesses what are sort of the trends in Pakistan in terms of not only in terms of consumers buying behavior, like what kind of stuff they search for, what kind of stuff they buy, when the buying increases and decreases. And it's interesting how if you look at, for example, on one of the charts, we show what happens to the growth of sales by month. You look at an event like 11/11, which we created, and you notice that it has such a huge influx into the retail market. And it's funny, I was talking a few days ago to someone, and we were talking about how now 11/11 has become an offline event as well, right? First year we did it, even though it was a horrible year for us to do it ourselves. It was a tough year. But the next year, which was this past 2019, excuse me, there was all these places in the mall that were doing 11/11. So I think the retail sector is obviously we drew some interesting insights because with e-commerce you can you can track a lot of data. You can understand that what are people looking for, and then what are they buying? If they search for something, does it convert or not? So what are things that are harder to convert? Whereas offline, आपको पता नहीं, अगर कोई try करता है कोई कपड़े and then नहीं लेता है या लेता है, you don't really know, right? You have very, very distinct information that you can identify. Whereas with online, you can sort of do that. And then the second thing that was sort of interesting for us, and we gave a little bit more insights, was where do sales come from? Because generally mindset ये कि कराची लाहौर इस्लामाबाद में ही चीजें बिकती हैं. But there's a lot of emerging markets in Pakistan that people would not think of, and it's interesting that not only are customers coming from there, sellers are also coming from there. So it's all over Pakistan people are adopting e-commerce. It's very interesting actually that we have sellers from over 200 cities or towns, because I don't even think there's 200 cities. It would have to be 200 cities and towns in Pakistan. Yeah. And we delivered to a few hundred cities on 11/11. I think it was 259 cities or something like that, or cities and towns that we delivered to. So it's just insightful that you would think that internet or e-commerce सिर्फ आप कराची लाहौर इस्लामाबाद से use होता है, but actually it's evolving where people from all over Pakistan are using it.
Yeah, I saw in the report that actually you've done business in like 549 cities in Pakistan, cities, towns, smaller towns.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. That level of penetration is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and it's increasing very rapidly from both the consumers and sellers. So because what the thing is, at the end of the day, the needs are very similar. Like सुबह जब आप नहाते हैं तो आपको साबुन की जरूरत है, आपको शैम्पू की जरूरत है, and ये जो चीजें, most of the people across the world, across the country need similar things. So maybe I might buy Lifebuoy and you might buy Lux, but we will both buy. We both need those things. So people generally, the buying habits are for a large percentage of the categories somewhat similar.
Interesting. So you do identify three different types of customers. I noticed you didn't go into too many attitudes and behavior stuff that might be proprietary. I understand that. So it's very basic demographic segmentation. But what I did want to ask you about was this number of 85% that you mentioned. As 85% of all internet users in Pakistan have shopped on Daraz at some point in the last year. That's a crazy huge number. That's what, 50 million people have shopped on Daraz in the last year?
No. So just to clarify, it's of people that have purchased online.
Oh, so 85% of the total population of online purchasers.
Of online purchasers. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Of course, it's a much smaller population, and but the point of that is that obviously there's as you tackle the market, part of it is that people online, those are sort of the ones that are the lowest hanging fruit that you want to try to get, and then obviously you want to try to make sure that you can cater to a service that as more and more internet penetration increases, that you can actually cater to more and more customers as well.
Yeah. So Salman, I'm going to just keep on asking questions. So please feel free to jump in at any time, okay?
Yeah, so I would love your thoughts on sort of from when you look at sort of the profile of the e-shopper, given your experience and what you've been up to, does this fit the realm of what you would have thought a regular Pakistani e-shopper is, or what are things that sort of stood out to you?
Okay, so the data that you provided for segmentation is very basic, right? So saying young adults 18 to 24 doesn't really tell me much. What would be an interesting discussion would be, what are the attitudes and behaviors you're seeing in this group? How are they different between, let's say, the KLIs of the world versus the second-tier towns versus your third and potentially fourth? And the funny thing is that in Pakistan, a fourth-tier town is 2 million people, right? Which is, a massive city in Western Europe or North America. Yeah. So I would love to understand the actual behaviors that you're seeing, and I think that segmentation would be much more interesting than 18 to 24 versus, your 35 to 45. Yes, of course. I mean, there are some very basic things, as I said, you mentioned in the report, but I believe that the data that you have in terms of how much time people are spending on the app, how many different products they're viewing before they actually make a decision, how many times do they come back to the app before they actually buy? How many times are they opening, closing, leaving, starting a new session, coming back again? All of those things would be interesting, because I just recently, like today, went through a decision process in trying to buy something online. And I did actually go to Daraz, and I ended up not buying from Daraz. And the reason I'm mentioning this too is because I was looking for something very specific. And while that product was available, the accessories around the product were not. And so I actually went to another site, paid probably 30-40% more because they had what I wanted in terms of the support for that product. So, but obviously I'm a different kind of consumer. I'm in a different age bracket. I have a different level of disposable income, and I have a different level of comfort looking across multiple channels and multiple players in the ecosystem. I have access to Amazon and eBay and other channels that may not be available to the average Pakistani buyer. And I think that segmentation of the average Pakistani buyer is going to be very interesting when you look at their behaviors and their propensity to buy online, their level of comfort with buying online. And I think that once you see that changing, especially at the bottom of the pyramid, Salman and I have talked about this before. Someone in my circle, a driver, actually used to ask me to buy products for him that he had found on Daraz. He didn't have the confidence to order them himself. He would still pay for it. He would have them delivered to my house, and he would actually just pay for it in cash. And now he's doing that without asking me. He's just placing the order because his level of confidence has gone up. Because he's tried it a couple of times and he says, हाँ माल आ जाएगा और अगर मुझे पसंद नहीं आया तो मैं उधर ही वापस कर दूंगा. You know, so he has that level of confidence. But what is happening in the interior of Sindh? What is happening? You guys mentioned that Hyderabad is one of your wow hotspots. Multan, Faisalabad, Sialkot, I would imagine. You know, these are fast growing cities. I'd love to understand the difference in consumer behavior there.
That's a very valid point, and I think part of this is also the reason I ask is that I think we also since we introduced this, we also heard back from a lot of the people in the community that this would be interesting insights if you could share in the future. This would be interesting. So the idea is this was obviously the first time we did it, and the hope is that every year when we launch it, we start providing some more information that can help the entire ecosystem grow. That can also help people understand that what is actually happening, and it actually will help hopefully get a lot more attention from the regulatory authorities as well. That this is an industry which needs to be taken seriously, much more seriously, and I think there's still a lot of good things that have been done. But the idea is that to really make it a more credible industry, and it requires in part efforts from sort of everyone in the value chain, whether it's the Darazes of the world or whether it's someone selling from an Instagram page.
No, I agree with you. And what I would recommend you do on that front is take some of the key insights that you have on page number 7 of your report, for example, convert it into a really nice infographic, and put it out as a quarter-page ad in the Dawn, in the Business Recorder, in the Jung, in Urdu. And put it out there and let the government know that, hey, look, these are major things that are happening that are changing the face of the way of how business is done in Pakistan. If you guys don't support this industry now, it will never reach its full potential.
No, I agree. I think there's definitely, and I think there's still. I mean, look, I think when you look at things like the e-commerce policy framework that has been developed with a lot of work from the Ministry of Commerce and a lot of work from many people in the private sector, things are moving along the right direction. And then the good thing is, I think since it took a while to sort of get it announced, but since it got announced, there was a lot of efforts from the private sector to take ownership of it and say, okay, and divvy up the work, frankly. And some people said, okay, I'll take care of this, I'll take care of this, and then they went back with very, very tangible action points that could be suggested eventually to the government and actually put into action.
Nice.
So I have 2 questions. In fact, 3 questions. All right. So the first question is that when we talk about the 18 to 24 segment being the highest in terms of purchase, are we looking at some qualitative analysis of that as well in terms of are people buying for the people who are not online, like their parents and older people? Is it just that this generation is actually more internet savvy and they're the sort of purchasers for the household? Are we doing any qualitative on that, or are we just going with the numbers that we see?
No, we obviously do ask in the when we had the samples broken up, we did ask if they were buying for other people as well. And of course, it's inevitable. I think in Pakistan, if you look at it, even something like a credit card or debit card, if you're fortunate enough to have a bank account, there'll be maybe one bank account in the family, right. And not only in the family, it'll be like in the khandan. Right? If I want something, I'll be like, मेरे चाचा के पास कार्ड है, मैं उनसे मांगता हूँ और फिर मैं इस्तेमाल करूँगा, तो मेरा डिस्काउंट मिलेगा. Right? So, and that's it's very different habit than North America, where you turn 18 and you move out of the house and get a credit card. So it's sort of a different behavior. But we did look into some of those, yes.
Okay, so so can you share some of the thoughts around that? I mean, are people relatively buying for the family, or is it like a personal purchase? What are we looking at?
Yeah, most of the people in that age bracket are buying for themselves. But like I said, obviously, and similar to what was being discussed right now, is that it takes a while to get comfortable with it as well. So there's definitely, it's inevitable that they'll be buying for their family as well. But majority of the people are buying for themselves or for their household. So it could be that someone in their household they're purchasing for. But like I said, it's there's a little bit of qualitative data which indicates that at least that it's a majority for themselves.
Okay, so lead on question from there is that so when I was looking at e-commerce in Pakistan, which is like 5 or 6 years ago, the grocery segment was really small, and I believe that now it has picked up to some extent. So in terms of growth of the grocery segment, what are we looking at? I mean, because I would imagine that that's a household purchase when we talk about grocery.
Yeah, yeah, and I think let's look at. Do you want to look at pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Pre-COVID. We'll come to the post-COVID scenario in a second, but yeah, pre-COVID.
Yeah, so I think pre-COVID, obviously, there's a natural tendency in groceries that people it's an offline channel, and the penetration of even when we look at, for example, our fruits and vegetable delivery, pre-COVID, there was a lot of efforts we had to do to get people to understand why they should buy online and to get comfortable with it. Things like fruits and vegetables, and it's not only actually in Pakistan. I think even in Canada, you have you can order from Walmart and get it delivered to your doorstep. But you probably want to feel the apple before you buy it, and it's not that's a natural thing in certain segments of groceries. But when you look at things that are sort of that are non-perishables, then people are getting more and more comfortable with it. The consumer buying behavior in grocery is slightly different, in that when I order a phone and it shows up in 5 days, I'm kind of okay with it. But the buying behavior in grocery is that I wake up at 10 and 11-12 baje I'm kind of deciding ke lunch ke liye kya banega, or maybe I wake up at 8 and I decide by 10 what I need to make for lunch, and then I need those items by 12, right? So the behavior is sort of different, and then the supply chain of that is very different, right? You cannot wait 4 or 5 days, and then in a country like Pakistan that is vast and massive, being able to have the infrastructure that can reach every nook and corner in 2 hours is challenging. But what we did is, when we obviously we now have same day express delivery in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. In pre-COVID times, if you order before 4 p.m., you would get anything in our warehouse the same day. So the idea was to sort of allow that supply chain to be a little bit shorter, so that you have that ability that I'll get a product maybe by evening if I want to make something for dinner. But that's one of the reasons grocery has been an area which has generally been a little bit more challenging, because it requires very different sort of supply chain.
Right. You guys recently launched the Daraz Mart, right?
Yeah, D-Mart we launched just actually after COVID. We had plans of launching it prior to that, but COVID was sort of it definitely
was the catalyst.
It definitely was the catalyst for that.
Interesting. And how's that doing? Yeah.
It's been doing awesome. It's been doing great, and I think it's the only reason I would have said that it hasn't. The only thing I could have improved is, I think, if we had more support from sort of the regulatory authorities that allowed us to deliver both essentials and non-essentials. But I think people are obviously, so grocery delivery week over week increased about 50%, and the basket size increased about 70%. So obviously that panic buying nature, where people wanted to get bigger, they wanted to get more things and make sure they had all the things they wanted at home. The pickup in fresh produce, fruits and vegetables was anywhere between 5 and 8x. So that was quite a dramatic increase, because people didn't want to leave their homes. And I think just post COVID, the behaviors are changing a lot. And it was interesting. So search terms that, and we showed some of them in this report as well. And if you go towards the end, and it was interesting because you would see hand sanitizer, masks, all that. And when you look at last week, it has now evolved from that to mobile phones, baby clothes, so behavior, and that's a very encouraging sign, is that these things, they move quickly, but they're also indicative of human behavior and going towards a normal behavior that we would have assumed to be normal pre-COVID. But the idea is that it hopefully indicates that that demand for the retail sector is still there. Of course, I think it's naive to think that the retail sector is not going to take a hit, but it's also encouraging that hopefully it can make a comeback and sooner rather than later.
Interesting.
So can I ask a trend question, and maybe we can do a analysis over North America and Pakistan on that. All three of us have some experience on both markets. So retail grew in North America traditionally because of malls and that whole idea of people going and spending time and just wasting time and money inside the mall, right? The question that I was getting at was that, do you think that we can bypass the mall trend completely in Pakistan and move straight to e-commerce, or are we going to have to go through the same growth trend as we've seen in the rest of the world? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think obviously, I think predominantly majority of the retail that happens in Pakistan is not happening in malls, right? So I think malls is just it's an evolution of that to some degree, and the evolution of that largely in Pakistan is also driven by the fact that entertainment is provided in these areas. They're family friendly, so it's beyond just a shopping experience. I would majority of the retail in terms of transactions still happens in the bazaars, right? It's not necessarily happening in the malls. Of course, the malls contribute to it, but so I think it is an evolution. And I think the evolution in Pakistan it'll depend largely on the demand side that comes in, and the demand side is very, very dependent on internet and smartphone penetration, which I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on smartphone penetration in the country. It's there, but it's something that we have to ensure is there's easier access for the wider population. Internet is not just internet, but having infrastructure in every nook and corner of Pakistan is still not there. And then on top of that, the duties that are there on smart sometimes don't make it the easiest to purchase smartphone devices for the wider population. So I think it'll be an evolution. I don't think we'll just sort of skip it.
Okay.
So my perspective on this is that if you look at a city like Karachi, which has a population of 25 million plus, there are literally 2 malls in the whole city. In Karachi today, if you built another 10 malls, they would be full. They would be packed out on day one. It's the same with Lahore. You've got 3 malls in Lahore. You've got 2 malls in Islamabad. Now that number is going to become 3 or 4 malls for the whole of Islamabad and Pindi. The reality is, with the population size that we have, and the point that Ehsan was trying to make is that this is an experiential thing for people. When you go to the mall, you see people riding the escalators for the first time in their lives. You see kids going up on the escalators and their parents making videos of them.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And then they come down the other side and their parents are making videos of them. That's the highlight of that kid's week, is riding the escalator. And then, they go to the food court and you can see that, they're not the most well off, but they will take out, 2,000 rupees on that day, and they'll buy the McDonald's meals for the kids, and, they'll be sharing meals and whatever, but it's a completely different experience. It's not about the retail part of the mall. It's about the mall experience itself. The fact that it has air conditioning, the fact that it has, bijli all the time, the fact that it's a secure space for children to play in. These things the West went through in the 1960s. We're just getting there now. So I think in Pakistan, this is at least a 10, 15, 20-year trend. And maybe beyond that, we'll see that, faster move away from malls, but not in the short term. I think we're too far behind on the curve for that.
So no impact of COVID on the culture of going to malls?
I mean, right now... It's completely dead right now, obviously, right? Malls are all closed. Yeah. Physically, the doors of the malls are closed.
I think even after COVID, I think just generally... And you know what? I look at, for example, just the interest from brands and sellers right now. There's a huge influx of demand from brands and sellers. Brands that may not have ever been interested in going online are going and telling the government that don't open our stores, but let us go on, let us sell online. And from our side, we're introducing a stimulus package to help SME sector growth and ensure that for the last few months where they've suffered, we can try to help them sort of fight through this and get back on their feet. So we're hopefully launching that later this week, or well, not many days left in this week, but probably early next week, inshallah.
Fantastic. So let's talk about trends. What do you see, SM, for the next year or two in terms of e-commerce in Pakistan?
Yeah, so I think short. So let's look at immediate, short, medium, and long, I guess. Immediate and short is, I think, the retail sector is definitely going to take a dip. There's no doubt about it. Buying behaviors are going to change. Even if even if you've made your salary, you're going to say that I don't know what's happening in the world. Let me hold on to it. So I think there's going to be a general contraction in the retail market. E-commerce, I think, is going to start taking a bigger portion of that market. But I think at the end of the day, the pie will be smaller. So the e-commerce market will also suffer for the short term. I think medium term, the focus and push towards digitization will continue. And I think, I was looking at a case study, and I actually did a town hall today in which I presented this case study to the entire company. And I talked about that in 2003, Alibaba was going through very uncertain times, and 2002. And 2003 is when SARS happened, and they had an incident where one of their employees contracted it, and then they had to go all into quarantine. And this was weeks before they launched their biggest sort of platform at that time, Tabao. So, and they went into quarantine. They were working from 8 in the morning to 10 p.m. at night, just trying to get this product launched. They launched it. And that's when the growth of Alibaba took off, was because internet penetration dramatically increased. And there's many memes you guys have seen that there's companies saying that, oh, we've been trying to digitize for 10 years and COVID did it and we couldn't do it for 10 years. And to some degree it's partially true. It's because it's forcing the hand. It's forcing people to try something new and being like, oh, that's actually quite convenient. I actually quite like this. And I think part of it is that it's still, I think it's, of course, I think there's a long way to go. I think there's a long way to go, and I think to some degree we need to force the hand of people to some degree out of this normal behavior to really try something different and try something new. But so I think the trend in the medium term will be positive for e-commerce. I think it'll, it was already good dynamics, but I think those will improve post-COVID. So like I said, short, medium term, challenging. Latter half of medium and long term, I think will be positive.
Great. Salman, any other questions?
So will the pharmaceutical category face any challenges in e-commerce in Pakistan in the near future?
Yeah, I think it's just a regulated industry, right? So I think, and to be honest with you, it's a very interesting sector of the market because unlike North America, where you have CVS, you have Shoppers, and they're formalized industries with formal pharmacies. And that you're getting authentic medication. In Pakistan, vast majority of pharmacies are just sort of mom and pop shops, and you don't know for sure what you're getting. So there is actually some players that have entered the space like Divago and stuff. They've really identified this as an opportunity where authenticity makes a big difference. And so in Pakistan, I think there's actually a good opportunity in that space. And I think some of the spaces that are going to benefit from this generally are going to be health tech, agri-tech, and those areas that I think are going to be able to benefit from it. So I think it's a regulated industry, so you have to sort of manage it, and in terms of how you do it. But I definitely think that there's just not only from an e-commerce perspective, I think just in the offline world as well, there's just always if I go buy something, is it real? Am I taking what I'm supposed to be taking? and that there's definitely I think an opportunity for a consolidation play in the offline world here too, where you launch the equivalent of a Shoppers or CVS or Walgreens, which actually gives people the comfort that when you buy from here, you're getting something that you can trust.
Or a Nahdi pharmacy from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly.
They have like 500 stores now in Saudi, and they're bigger than most of the supermarkets in Pakistan. Yeah. Oh, that's really good insight. All right, man.
Great.
Yeah, this was very, very interesting, and
Nice seeing you after some time. I'm glad to see you guys are both doing well and healthy and safe.
Yes, likewise, bro. Likewise, and we're looking forward to the continued growth and success of Daraz, inshallah. And I think that in every cloud there is a silver lining, and in this cloud, I think the fact that e-commerce has gotten a steroid injection in various body parts all at once is certainly good for the country, I think.
I think so too. I think right now, I think our biggest focus has to be the SME sector. And I think, this is where I really see that e-commerce can help, is that right now the markets are shut and we have to make sure that, these SMEs can get back on their feet. Because what really scares me and what really keeps me up at night is the fact that we had to turn off so many of our marketplace sellers. And that means that, 22,000 homes essentially were not making money because of us having to turn them off. And I think this is not just our sellers, but all the offline sellers, and that really worries me. And I think e-commerce really can solve that, because you can run your business from home, and the behavior is different, right? In the offline world, when you go to the mall, like you said, you go for the experience. In online, you do your research, you do the transaction, you click checkout, then there's a physical interaction when your product arrives. So we can actually control a lot of that. We can ensure that people are safe from the pandemic, and at the same time, actually, that the economy can start and consumers can get what they need, and hopefully pump more spending into the economy so it starts reviving. I think it's very necessary that any successful economy is driven by the SME sector, and I think in Pakistan, about 80% of the 80% of the employment in the non-agriculture space is provided by the SME sector, and this is the area that we need to ensure gets up and running and really can access online, and that's actually why we're doing the stimulus packages, just to say that, look, just start selling online and just start getting your business running, get your cash flows in, and and don't just rely on people coming, because it is going to be tough, where people, even if once the lockdown ends, behaviors are changing. They're not going to easily just go and start shopping in malls and bazaars.
You think there will be a permanent change though? Because I'm not seeing it, bro. I mean, you go out to the market in Karachi and it's like, what the hell is going on here? Yes, there are people standing in line, well spaced out and all that, but I mean, it's the same number of people, even during lockdown.
I think permanent is a very long time.
Yes.
So I think just in terms of, I think behaviors are going to change a little bit. And I think if we, like I said, I think if we move in the right direction out of this, the fear I have is that we come out of this and we kind of just go back to where we were in many ways. And I think one of the things that we need to make sure, even from government policy perspective, is that there are times, I think, in a country's life, like a business's life, where you have to just sort of say, okay, now this is where we're going. And I think this is the time where you can actually kind of just say this, redirect it to some degree. And I think it requires a bit of a forceful hand to just in parts of it. So, and then inshallah, I think we'll come out of it stronger.
This too shall pass, inshallah.
This shall pass.